Welcome to season 2 of the Jeremy Mullins podcast, where we take a deep dive into different educational topics to help you optimize your life. I am Jeremy, your host, registered dietitian, strength coach, and I'm here today with Zach Boden, who is a previous collegiate football player, and I've already gave him a little bit of grief off camera about this, at Harvard and Duke, which means he was smart and athletic. And he is also one of the co-founders of Homegrown Lifting, who is one of our partners / sponsors of the podcast, who specializes in what I would call truly garage gym equipment. It doesn't mean if, hey, you own a CrossFit facility out there that you can't buy their equipment, but you guys really target, the everyday, what I call person who is getting into fitness or needs that home gym. So with that being said, Zach, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy. Great to be on.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this, super excited about, partnership with you guys over the first, man, I don't even know. You and I are kind of the same where I think Reno and Will are they take care of certain parts of the business and you and I take care of other parts of the business. I don't know if it's been 6 or 7 months we've been working with you guys, but it's been from our end a great partnership, some good podcasts with Will. And I was super excited when Reno said that you were going to come on, especially with your background as a nurse and, as a power lifter and playing college ball, because there's a lot of things that I want to dissect out of that, talk about that, and how it can relate over to general wellness and fitness.
100%, man.
Hey, get started first with you're a co-founder of Homegrown Lifting, and you were telling me you guys got started really like the idea came in the pandemic, right?
Yeah. So I met Will in college up at Harvard. He was one of our offensive linemen. I played running back up there, and we'd always kind of wanted to do something together business-wise. We were really good friends in college and everything. My background coming out of college was more in financial services, whereas Will was an engineer. Fast forward, I worked in finance for a couple of years after college. Will was doing some ad hoc engineering work. We kind of always bantered the idea back and forth. Pandemic hits, I'm setting my garage gym here and I can't find any weights. And I'm like, dude, like, can you help a brother out? Can you make some of these? Like, what's the gist here? I can't find anything. Let's start making these. And he was like, yeah, this is something I think I can do. And we set a little money, pumped a little money into it, and it's kind of grown to a point now where it's kind of grown beyond really what either of us thought it would be, and it's been a really cool journey so far. It's been really awesome.
And here's the thing that I think, and this is my opinion, based on getting to know you guys. The reason that it's growing is you started by helping yourself, right?
Yeah.
Hey, I want to make great quality equipment that I can have in my gym so that I can work out.
Oh,
Right?
100%. Yeah. Will, I mean, if he was going to make me some garbage equipment, then I was going to let him know it was going to be terrible. And so, yeah, he better have made it pretty good from the outset. He did a very good job. I'm just giving him a hard time. We made it for ourselves. Absolutely.
And I think that's like when you look at a lot of products, like products are made to fill a gap or to fill a service, right? That's, if you're looking at a business, you want to make sure that there is a need for your product. And for you guys, I feel like, you made this high quality product for yourself. And then the business kind of just happened with it, right? And
Exactly.
the lovely thing that you guys have done, like you've kept the prices, low. Yes, they got to be a certain point where you got to run the business, right? Like,
Yes.
got to make some money, you got to pay your employees. Like, it's a business in that sense. But like when you go on, you compare bumper plates to bumper plates. Always when I post on social media for you guys, it's like highest quality, for the best rate. Because I hate to use the term cheap because they're not cheap. It's high quality for a low price.
Most definitely. I mean, efficacy is really kind of what we're looking for, right? How effective can your dollar be when it comes to outfitting your garage gym? And we'd like to think our bumper plates are competitive with anything you'll find out there. It doesn't really matter, at the end of the day, these things are a commodity, right? We're not doing anything terribly different than other folks are doing. Will is an exceptional engineer. We do some cool stuff with our collars. Our binder is very high quality, but at the end of the day, it's crumb rubber binder and some steel shot mixed with other materials, right? We're not splitting the atom here. So pricing is a huge component of our strategy. We like to give people as much bang for their buck as they can get, and we found that people really like that. We're very transparent about it as well.
And outside the bumper plates, like I've got a couple of the kettlebells. Like the kettlebells are awesome, right? They're good quality, and then I use the dumbbell a lot with the adjusting weights. So I use that a lot. I didn't tell you this offline backstory. I tore deadlifting. So we'll get into the powerlifting here in a second. Injuries
Very
and recovery.
Cool.
But I tore my bicep tendon in the spring deadlifting. So I
Brutal.
had
Yeah.
surgery for that, recovery for that. So I was using the dumbbell a lot on the opposite arm, and then,
Yeah.
so love the fact that it could be, adding weights to the dumbbell versus it being a set dumbbell weight.
For sure, for sure. And we kind of pioneered that little like the change plate out of crumb rubber. I think we're one of the only folks that do that, and it makes it so you can drop them in the garage and everything. So kind of being versatile with what we offer while keeping the price point low is kind of what we're all about. So love that you're able to put the products to good use, man. That's awesome. Love hearing that.
I love it, man. I was cleared. When was that cleared? November? I think it was cleared in November with six
Yeah.
months to lifting. And so it's been good. It's been neat to see, like, I came, still was able to do, bar muscle ups, still able to do
Yeah.
some pull ups. Like, it was neat to see that I didn't lose that much strength, inside of lifting, some 100% because I just couldn't
Yeah.
train.
Yeah.
But I was pretty happy with what was able to maintain and even the size. I had a DEXA scan done and it was minimal loss on that side. So pretty happy with the outcome.
Yeah, man, that's super good to hear. And that's super difficult to do for a lot of folks. I know, especially the thing with injury, what I found in my career is you can get really disillusioned, especially on the outset. You kind of lose motivation a little bit. So that's really cool to hear that you were able to keep your muscle mass, keep your strength. So I mean, what people don't realize is it comes back so quickly once you're able to actually start doing movements again. That's the ticket, right? It's getting to that point where you can start moving again without pain. You've completed the rehab, the strength comes back quite quickly. And so there is certainly a light at the end of the tunnel. Even something as dramatic as a bicep tear, that's a horrible injury.
Yeah, and for everyone listening, I mean, our topic is going to be recovery today, just from training in general. But yeah, when you have an injury, like I always tell people, don't focus on what you can't do. And I think that
Mhm.
is something that, unfortunately, we as humans, right? Being the way we're wired, like you're wired to think negative. You hear a
Yeah.
noise, back in the day, you're like, is that noise going to kill me? Do I need to
Yeah.
kill this noise? Right. That's the way we're
Certainly.
wired. We look for the negative. And I think when that injury occurs, everybody's looking at what they can't do, right?
Right.
Versus looking at what you can. And I always say it was a disguise or a blessing in disguise for me because it got me back into mountain biking. And I found my passion for riding again. We did a half Ironman, so toured in late April, 1st of May, had surgery, half Ironman in August, hadn't swam, just jumped in the water. It was like, let's go, and then ended up doing the full Ironman in November. And so it was that injury was actually kind of a catalyst to get back into, the endurance space, to a degree. But yeah, if you listeners, if you have an injury, focus on what you can do and not what you can't. Okay. One last thing before we dive into recovery. Do me a favor, guys. Even if you're not in the market right now for any home equipment, head over to Homegrown Lifting on Instagram. Give them a like, give them a follow. And then also they're on Facebook. Sorry, I don't know if you're on TikTok and all those other platforms.
I don't know where I'm
Yeah,
talking about. Yeah.
I'm mid
Especially right
40s.
now.
I'm mid 40s. I stay Instagram, Facebook. That's about all you'll get out
Yeah.
of me.
Facebook, Instagram is kind of our bread and butter, man.
Awesome. Well, hey, let's talk about because for powerlifting, would you say that's your hobby? If you would say
That
right now,
is that is most certainly my hobby. I'm part of a small community here in Charleston, South Carolina. We do a great job. It's a little club that I'm in, Charleston Powerlifting Club. A lot of dudes just, getting together. There's a local gym kind of where we all kind of meet, and then I lift in my garage as well, using our homegrown equipment for a lot of stuff. But it's a great community, man. It's a sport that I've really kind of fallen in love with. I didn't really, in college, the way you lift in college, especially with football, is so much different than how we lift for powerlifting, right? In college, it's all about injury prevention. And yeah, you need to stay strong and whatnot. But football is such a sport of speed and change of direction that like brute strength is not the predominant variable in that sport, contrary to what a lot of people think. It's all about how quickly you can move. Gaining leverage on folks and being adaptable, in my opinion, are so important for football. Whereas powerlifting, it's a bit more brutish, right? It's, how much weight can we move at the end of the day by any means necessary. So I've kind of fallen in love with the simplicity of it as well as the complexity of it, right? A lot of these movements we're doing, like with a squat, when you really break it down, it's super complex, man. I mean, you can go low bar, you can go high bar, you can change where your feet are positioned. There's a lot of different variables in that movement. And so kind of breaking it down and hanging out with some really cool like-minded folks here in the area has really, given me a love for the sport. Absolutely.
that's awesome. And something I encourage everyone to do is find and I call it adult hobby because a lot of people I'm working
Right.
with their wellness journey, right? And I always say like for if you're a young coach out there listening to this today, remember, you always want to speak to your audience. And I got it. I'm mid 40s. My audience is more of maybe late 20s, into 65, 60, 70 years old. That is my audience, right? So when I say find a hobby, in my mind, we're out of the recreational sports, right?
Yeah.
People are not playing, or organized sports anymore. People aren't playing football, right? They're not playing basketball. Like, that's not the clientele. So I always encourage people, find a hobby that you enjoy. And for you right now, it's powerlifting. I'm not saying that won't change over time, right? Like mine's cycling. I enjoy
Yeah.
cycling as my adult hobby, right? Good thing about it, still great cardiovascular training, right?
Awesome.
You're still getting outside, so there's benefits from it, but it's the hobby.
Certainly.
The other benefit to strength training, or powerlifting in the sense of that we're talking for you, it builds that strength for later in life.
Yes. Huge,
And I,
huge.
and I don't know if you've touched on it, in any of the research, because you're an emergency room nurse, correct?
Yeah, so my day job, yeah, I work in the emergency room here in Charleston,
Okay.
downtown. That's my day job. I love it.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So I don't know if you get to have many conversations that people, hey, you need to go do some, strength training, but it's one of my underlying coaching, for the people I work with, and even for a message on the podcast, is like people need to get stronger, right?
Yeah.
Like strength is one of those things. If we look at in individuals who are in their 70s, and 80s, like if they still have relatively good strength, and I'm not saying that the 70-year-old needs to bench press 300 pounds,
No.
but relative, if you're 70 years old and you have strength and you're stronger than 90% of the other 70-year-olds out there, you're going to live a better quality life.
Yeah. Unquestionably so. Not only will you live a better quality life, you're probably going to live longer, right? A lot of our
Yeah.
older patients we see, that have more negative outcomes from a fall, it's because of they crack a femur and they bleed, and there's a lot of blood stored in your bones. And people, that's one of those things that people don't, outside of medicine, don't really realize is that when you have a pelvic fracture, a femur fracture, that's a life-threatening event. That's a big deal. Not only is it terribly, terribly painful, but it's can lead to some very negative outcomes. And by having that strength and preparing yourself for that part of life early on, by weight training, by resistance training, building that bone density, you're really setting yourself up for success in the long run.
I want you to hold all those thoughts, because that's going to
Yeah,
be that. I want to do a specific podcast on that, on like the benefits and what you see from, I want to say boots on the ground, right? Because you're
for
in
sure.
that, you're in the ER, right? Versus
Yeah.
me saying it like, hey, people are going to fall and, break a hip from just a small fall. Like, well, Jeremy's just saying that because he wants us to resistance train. Remember, I'm not getting benefits out of your resistance training. You are getting benefits out of your resistance training.
Mm-hmm.
On the flip side, powerlifting, especially at
Yeah.
the elite level, or at what I would say, this is a hobby. I care about how much I'm lifting,
Yes.
does pose a risk, for some injuries,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
In just
Absolutely.
any sport. Okay. Any sport. I'm not picking on Zach. I'm not picking on powerlifting with this. What I'm saying is, like, once you get into a sport and you're wanting to be a high level of it, it could pose a risk of injuries, because either overuse, right? Or just pushing the envelope for performance. So the question I have is, what are some of the things that has worked for you when it comes to the recovery process from your training sessions?
Yeah. I mean, so that's an awesome question, first off. And the first thing that's worked so well for me is, knock on wood, I've been very fortunate over my last like couple years of training. I haven't had any horrific injuries. And the first variable for me has been adjusting how I train, right? Like I'm not playing college football anymore. I don't need to be training 5 days a week, pedal to the metal. I don't need to be doing conditioning all the time. So just breaking my training down to 3 or 4 days a week, varying the intensity and working with people, talking with people about how best to do that has been huge for me. Uh, just adapting my training in of itself, even before addressing recovery, has been it's been such an important variable for me. And I've seen huge benefits from that. I've gotten stronger while also not getting hurt. So that's step number one for me, clearly has been that. In terms of actual recovery, I know it's kind of the latest and greatest fad right now is I got a sauna for Christmas and I've been ripping
Okay.
that thing, man. It's awesome. And that's not really an area of life that I experienced in college, coming out of college, but it's one of those things, I read a lot about, and it's been an awesome adjunct for me, man. I get out of that thing, I feel awesome.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
would lean. I would, because people ask all the time, like, "Hey, Jeremy, would you do a cold plunge or sauna?"
yeah,
I'm always going to lean probably to the sauna first because there's actually a little bit more data out there
Yeah.
on the sauna, on the heat proteins for recovery and kind of, I hate to use the term detox, but I'll use the term detox with it,
Right.
but recovery from the sauna than there is the cold plunge. I think
Yeah.
the latest thing I saw, coming out from a research standpoint on cold plunges was that if you were in really good shape, doing cold plunges too often could have a negative
Yeah.
effect. So it's kind of cool that you said it, and just from a subjective standpoint, you're like, hey, I'm really enjoying the sauna
Yes.
aspect for the recovery. And I want to touch on
Yeah.
you said earlier, and once again, know the audience. So if you're not watching on YouTube, guys, Zach is probably close to single digit body fat, if not single digit body fat. So he's lean. He doesn't necessarily need to be in a caloric deficit or do additional cardio. Okay. So I want to kind of point that out. So when you hear him say, hey, I lift 3 to 4 times a week, those are going to be really hard sessions inside of powerlifting, right?
Yeah.
You'll
2 hours
probably,
minimum.
yeah,
Yeah.
2 hour sessions. So
Yeah.
take that into consideration because I think a lot of people may have heard that and be like, well, he only works out 3 days a week. But the volume that's being done during those sessions is high volume, and he's getting cardiovascular benefit because he's probably moving quite a bit of volume, at
Right.
probably certain, rest intervals. But yeah, and where I'm going with that, Zach, I think a lot of people think that they have to do something hard every single day to see results. And that's just not the case.
No, and I used to be one of those people, and that's something that's been a revelation for me in my training. And it's been really eye-opening to see the progress I've made from a strength standpoint. I mean, like it's been remarkable. I'm 32 now, and I'm the strongest I've ever been. I'm stronger at 32. I'm probably 80, 90% stronger I am at 32 than I was at 21.
That's
And
awesome.
a lot of that is having to do with training, right? It's just how can I be most effective in my training? And I found that being intelligent with my intensity as it pertains to my sport has reaped huge dividends for me. It's been awesome. It's been really cool to see.
Yeah. And if someone was, or you choose powerlifting as is your hobby, right? And let's say you still got, 40, 60 pounds to lose, or
Mhm.
you've been a power lifter and you're 60 pounds, overweight, you could
Yes.
still train hard those 3 or 4 days. And then what we could
Yes.
do is add in the walking, some lower intensity movement that's not going to beat that body down on the other days to help increase the caloric expenditure. And even from a caloric standpoint, I've talked about this, before, Zach. What I would do is probably, give them what I call baseline calories. So
Yeah.
I'd set someone up in a caloric deficit, give them their baseline, but then allow them to fuel additional on the days they train. And I think that's, a key in the recovery process too, that, to recover optimally, you got to have fuel.
Most definitely.
And
Most
if you're in a
definitely.
caloric deficit, which I got it, guys, hey, a lot of my listeners, a lot of people I work with, we're trying to drop some body fat. That's a
Yeah.
goal. We got to be in the caloric deficit. But also when we start adding this performance in there or this hobby that we care about, there's ways that we can do both. But eventually,
Mhm.
hopefully, we drop the weight and we don't have to worry about the caloric deficit anymore.
And you have a hobby that you've fallen in love with, right? And you have something that's sustaining you for the long run, right? It's not a short-term goal, it's a long-term lifestyle. So I think that's a really, really wise approach. I think that's awesome. Really cool.
Awesome. All right. So you got sauna, you got days that you train.
Yep.
Do you have any other because I kind of assume there that you're not necessarily going out and doing any other cardio. I mean, do you like to run? Do you play
I love playing
pickleball?
tennis.
Okay.
I've fallen in love with playing tennis. Yes, I
Okay.
know. And it's such a funny thing. I mean, my dad kind of got me into that more than anybody else. It's just a way for us to kind of connect. He's gotten to be quite good. So I don't play as much tennis. Like I have a meet here I'm doing in about a month. So
Yeah.
I've really dialed that back. It's all kind of all into that powerlifting meet, but it's a great, especially in the summertime here in Charleston. It's awesome to run around, really burn a lot of juice playing tennis, get out there, work on your tan a little bit. It is Charleston. It's nice to live here at the beach, so that's hugely important.
That's awesome.
But yeah, that's something I've kind of fallen in love with, and it's a fun game for sure.
And that would be an easy transition. Like if people are listening, like going from powerlifting to okay, maybe tennis, right? You
Right.
mentioned 32 now. Maybe at 52, right? It becomes that tennis is the new hobby for you. But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that Zach would stop lifting, guys. Like he would still lift for that overall wellness and health. It just wouldn't be the passion of, okay, I'm getting as strong as I can pound for pound and doing
Yeah,
competitions. It would just be, all right,
for
I'm,
sure.
I'm resistance training with this now hobby of tennis. Okay.
Yes.
Hopefully people see that as like, that's the goal that we all have, right? I don't care, if it's tennis. I don't care if it's pickleball. One of my best friends, we tease him because he's like a buck 30 And he's all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like all the time. I'm playing pickleball. And we're like, you need to lift.
Right.
Yeah, we are, and we basically, I mean, because once again, I say man, I think Dave is probably maybe pushing 50 years old. Like we
Yeah.
had the conversation with him, like, hey, we're teasing you, but we're really not. Like for your health, we care about you as our friend. You need to lift.
Yeah.
Because he just wasn't, he didn't, he's small, he doesn't have a lot of muscle tissue. And we're like, if you don't do it now, you're going to have some problems later on in life.
He will. Yeah, he will. And that's, and it's one of those things. It's the earlier you start, the more dividends you will reap from that for sure. So
Awesome.
I'm glad you're providing him with some good education. That's
Yeah.
excellent.
All right. Well, don't be nervous on the next few questions. I'm not looking for what I would say, right? But
Okay.
what are some nutrition tips that you would say for recovery, and then maybe even supplementation? And once again, guys, just for I always like clarity on this. Zach and I have no conversation on what supplements I take or what I've recommended unless he's listened to some of the podcasts. He doesn't know. So
Yeah.
this will be kind of cool hearing it from your perspective. What you do look at from a nutritional standpoint for recovery, and then also supplementation.
Absolutely. So my nutrition's super basic, man. I don't do anything super crazy. I was fortunate in college where I was just force fed food all the time, and I was turned into kind of a fat little boy. And now that I'm out of college and in my working adult life, the pounds have kind of come off, right? They kind of load you up in college. They want you to be bigger. So I weigh about 182, 183 pounds right now, which is right where I want to be. Natural body weight right there. I eat 3 times a day. I eat what I want to a degree. I'm quite conscious about soft drinks. I don't drink any soft drinks. I feel like that's a lot of empty calories. They'll kill you. They're just terrible for you. Try to have at least 1 to 2 leafy green vegetables a day. I've grown to be quite fond of kale. That's kind of my favorite vegetable of choice, I will
Okay.
say. And then supplements, dude, I just take creatine. I've been taking creacolin, about 5 milligrams. I mean, it's not even really the recommended dose, but I've been taking that for probably 5, 6 years now, and it's done well by me, and I haven't really seen any urge to mess with it. I mean, it's done well. So I haven't really dialed in on supplementation on my end. That's certainly an area that, if I really wanted to optimize things for me, that's an area that I could certainly improve on. But it's done okay for me. And if it's one of those things that I feel like I'm missing out on a lot of potential, that's certainly an area that I could improve on.
No, I mean for recovery, you got one out of the three that I recommend, to everybody. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm big on, magnesium and omega threes, right?
Yeah.
So, magnesium from the standpoint of just better sleep, helping the muscles recover, actually helping the muscles relax. I think a lot of our cramping is actually low magnesium, not
It
necessarily.
is. We see that in
Yeah.
the
Okay.
hospital a lot.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think a lot of cramping issues is the low magnesium. And then as you mentioned, seen it in the clinical setting, we as a society are just low in magnesium. So
Mhm.
it's one of the supplements I recommend, but also for recovery and sleep. And then omega threes just to help decrease inflammation. So
Absolutely.
decreasing inflammation, quicker recovery, along with creatine. So those are the three that I probably like when we talk about recovery standpoint. Kind of comes out. And you mentioned veggies and getting rid of simple processed carbs.
Yeah.
I have a saying: simple is sexy. We call it P squared. Basically have a primary protein source with each meal and eat
Yeah.
a produce with each meal or snack.
That's
Right. So
exactly what I do, man.
yeah,
It's
like
worked
keep it.
great for
Yeah.
me.
And
Not that
then
complicated.
not that complicated. It is hard.
Yeah,
I'll
it
give.
is. It
I
is.
mean, there is a reason that pizza and Reese cups taste good,
Yes.
right? I mean, they taste good. It is hard,
Delicious.
but
Yeah.
keep it as simple as possible. And then what about like sleep? Have you noticed anything? I don't know. Do you work night shift? Do you work day shift?
I work day shifts. Yeah. So I work 7 to
Okay.
7, which is awesome. I managed to snake my entire way through nursing school, through my first, like, I have never worked a night shift, which is huge. Working night shift is so difficult. Hats off to my night shift people. It's really tough. It's a tough life. You make some good coin, but it's the sleep schedule. It's really difficult. I don't know if I could train the way I train while working a night shift. I think it'd be really challenging for me, for sure.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to recognize that. Some random knowledge for you and the listeners. I don't think I've ever mentioned this before. I actually went to nursing school twice.
No way. That's super
So
cool, man.
I went to nursing school straight out of high school, was 17 years old. It was a 2-year degree program and it
Yep.
started that summer. And, graduated at 17, went straight in this program. We had OB clinicals for my first clinical.
Yeah.
And at 17 years old, I'll admit, I was not mature enough and
No, it's tough, man.
and experienced in life enough to be like prepping for delivery. Let's just say it that
Oh,
way, right?
that's
Like,
wild.
yeah, man. Like I remember having to shave and prep this
Yeah.
female, and I was just like, man, I don't think I want to be a nurse. Uh, so that's how my dietetic career started because I
Very cool.
had a nutrition class, that first semester, found out there was such thing as a dietitian. Was into fitness, as a child, but also overweight. So I had that goal of, man, I want to help myself and other people in this,
Right.
this field. Fast forward, 4 years later, 5 years later, graduated college, did my internship, had my master's in nutrition, and my first job was clinical nutrition. And I always wanted to do sports nutrition. That was the goal.
Yeah.
But go back to 2004, 2005-ish era, there wasn't a lot of sports dietitian jobs.
Right.
They just weren't,
Smaller
there,
field.
right? Yeah.
Sure.
Even now, yes, your Division I schools, most of them will have a couple of dietitians, but that's more like the power schools,
Yep.
Florida State's, the Clemson, that type of deal. I don't think Marshall University has a dietitian or has ever had a dietitian yet.
Right.
So went back to nursing school, applied, and I'm like, if I'm going to be in the clinical field, I'm going to at least go
There
back
you
to
go.
where I can pick up shifts. I can go on to be a nurse practitioner or whatever the case may be. So applied, got back in, was doing awesome this time, a little more mature, still 24, 25 years old. So I wouldn't say,
Yeah, man.
yeah. And I got a job offer from a bariatric surgeon to come run his medical weight loss program. And it was cool. He had, we had a DEXA scan in his office.
Yep.
We would do bariatric education 2 days a week, but then Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I was strength training and doing dietary consults with just weight loss clients. And I'm like, man, this is what I wanted to do. I'm still clinical enough, but I'm getting to do this weight loss thing that I wanted to do. So I dropped out of nursing school a second time.
You got what you wanted, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's my nursing
Anecdote there. Yeah, no, that's super cool,
that's
man.
my
That's
relationship with nurses. And then my wife, she is a nurse by trade, and this past 2 years when we moved to Florida, she gave up nursing, is now a softball coach. So
no way. That's
yeah, so
awesome.
she followed her dreams, and she was the collegiate. This is another thing I don't think I've shared with the listeners. So my college, my wife is in the Hall of Fame as a college softball pitcher.
No way. That's
So
hardcore, man. That's super
yes,
cool.
so there's my nursing story for all the nurses out there. Like, hey,
Yeah.
it is a hard job. It is a respectful job. I gave it a try and took a pivot and went a different way.
Yeah. Well, it turned out well for you. So yeah, I think you came out ahead.
There we go. Zach, I appreciate your time. I do want to have you back on. I want to go into what we were kind of touching on earlier. I had to stop you though, like the importance of resistance training for long-term
Yeah.
health and what you see from a ER standpoint, like most common injuries that come from falls and that type of stuff. And why I want to talk about that will be not necessarily to scare people, but I always say people change for pain or pleasure. And I think a lot of times when they really hear, and I'm going to say it, 50-year-olds, having falls and
Yep.
ended up life changing at 50 years old or maybe even younger. Like it's important to do resistance training, not only for fat loss, not only for aesthetics, but for long-term health.
Certainly. Couldn't agree more.
Awesome, brother. Have a good day. And for the listeners, we'll talk to you soon.
See you, Jeremy.